Facial tics. This series of patients demonstrates a variety of facial tics, including blinking, oculogyric deviations, facial grimacing, and other facial and jaw involuntary movements. Cervical tics. This series of patients demonstrates a variety of tics involving chiefly the neck, including the so-called whiplash tics. If left untreated, such tics can result in secondary degenerative spine changes and even compression of the cervical roots and spinal cord.
Can you put your arms out in front of you? Good. Okay, I can go like this.
Shoulder tics. This series of patients demonstrates tics of shoulders that resemble focal dystonia, hence the term dystonic tics. Limb tics. This series of patients demonstrates simple or complex tics involving chiefly the arms and legs.
Says they're really hurting.
Do you have any warning before you have these tics?
Yes,
What do you feel?
sort of like a chill going up my back.
Okay.
And it's sort of like a cold chill, and it starts getting worse and worse.
And then once you have the tic, the burst of movement that you have, does that relieve the feeling?
Yes, sir.
For how long?
As long as I have the tic.
Truncal abdominal tics. This series of patients demonstrates tics involving the trunk and abdominal muscles. Some of the bending tics resemble intermittent repetitive camptocormia.
Okay, coming back. remember. That
Pictures.
Maybe not the sleep disorder that she has.
that is the Okay, would you please walk back to the camera? Okay, walk to the wall again. Right.
Complex tics. This series of patients demonstrates more complex and stereotypic tics.
Probably the one that injures me, and probably this one. No, when I hit myself, because it's caused injury. I mean, other than that, you know.
Now, I understand you had to go.
The most embarrassing tics is me wanting to grab my friends, and you know, and I try to laugh it off and just pretend I'm screwing around. You know, grab their genital area, genital fucker. That's, you know, embarrassing things like that, where I'll just grab them and then just like over and over.
Can you show me the area where you bruised yourself? Right there.
And fingernails.
Okay.
That's from fingernails going in, probably.
Could you go ahead and write today is a nice day? When was the last time you worked?
Probably 97 into 98.
Okay, it's about 6 years. And why can't you work as a transcriptionist?
I'm unable to keep my hand on the keyboard at all.
So you would hit the wrong key.
I was. Pump. Sometimes I could never even get my hand to go back to the keyboard after a twitch. And my speed was dropping.
Now, what about at home? Are you able to function reasonably well at home, or are there things you are not able to do at home?
I cannot iron because I will hit myself with the iron and burn myself.
Simple phonic tics. This series of patients demonstrates simple vocalizations without linguistic meaning.
something like
What are you doing? Fuck you, bitch. Fuck
inability to mentally focus on what I want to concentrate on.
So you have trouble focusing, trouble concentrating, is that right?
Particularly if I try to do mathematical research.
Uh-huh. And you are a mathematician, is that right? Mathematics
That's
professor.
what I used to be.
Yes.
Shut up!
It's okay. You come up.
Too, right? That's been going on for at least a couple years now.
Yes.
That causes you to have trouble at school paying attention.
Yes.
What does this go for?
Complex phonic tics. This series of patients shouts linguistically meaningful utterances, including coprolalia.
Some fucking nigga in the nigga. Herbs.
Pussy! Pussy! Cunt! Shit! Damn it! Monkey! I try not to hold it in.
Shoulder tics.
Could you put your arms in front of you, hold them up?
This patient demonstrates a simple phonic tic and a typical shoulder tic that is clonic at times and at other times is a more sustained, so-called dystonic tic, as demonstrated by the EMG recording. Tonic, isometric, tics. In addition to phonic tics, this pregnant woman experiences abdominal isometric contractions that have precipitated early labor.
Yeah. Oh.
Blocking tics. This patient demonstrates classic blocking tic, during which he suddenly becomes motionless. Most blocking tics are associated with isometric muscle contractions and may be viewed as variants of tonic tics.
Are the main problems he's having?
Complex motor tics. This patient demonstrates complex motor behavior that consists of repetitive somersaults and other repetitive complex movements.
Could you walk for me again?
Complex motor tics. This patient demonstrates complex running and stereotypic behavior as part of his Tourette syndrome, TS.
Okay, just stand.
Peripherally induced tics. This 43-year-old man suffered a left shoulder dislocation during a motorcycle accident 21 years ago. Within 2 weeks after the injury, he noticed the gradual onset of involuntary jerking movements of his left shoulder, which was markedly exacerbated after a second left shoulder injury 2 years later. The involuntary movements are phenomenologically identical to the dystonic tics that are typically associated with TS, but without the involvement of any other body part, and without phonic tics or the typical TS comorbidities such as attention deficit disorder or obsessive-compulsive disorder.
And come back. And one more time. Come back.
Coprolalia.
What's up, you prick asshole? Fuck you, bitch!
This patient with extremely severe coprolalia was the first reported case of the use of botulinum toxin injected into the vocal cords in the treatment of this disabling disorder.
Dickhead! Asshole, fuck you!
The premonitory sensation in the throat essentially completely resolved after botulinum toxin injections. The effects lasted about 3 to 4 months, and the patient was undergoing injections 3 or 4 times per year for several years.
Since the injection, what do you think has been happening as far as the coprolalia is concerned?
I think it's getting better.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot better. I don't have to do it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I can hold it in a lot longer than before. Because I feel like I don't have the need to tick. It just comes out whenever it feels like it. I don't have the need to all the time.
Self-injurious behavior. This patient has severe self-injurious tics, a compulsion to avulse her cornea, as a result of which she has already become blind in the left eye. These actions are preceded by an intense urge, which she can partially control by squeezing a ball.
Okay, so describe the feeling for me that you have before you actually poke your eye.
It's sort of like an urge to poke it and I can't control it. So it's like, you know, if I poke my eye, then it satisfies the urge.
Okay. Do you have any other movements or feelings or urges like this?
You mean like tics? Yeah, well I poke at my throat a little bit, but not very much. And then I like blink my eyes a lot and just poke things and sniff sometimes and make noises, but and then move my neck and just fidget all the time.
Okay. Now, what do you do with this ball that you have in your hand?
Well, I had this stress ball, so I won't poke my other eye. So I won't poke this eye. I do that sometimes, but this helps out so I don't. So if I have the urge to poke it, I just put my finger in it or I just squeeze it.
Okay. And by squeezing it, sometimes it takes away that urge?
Yeah.
Self-injurious behavior. This patient with TS has a severe compulsion to eviscerate himself and to expose his intestines, which is accompanied by a sexual climax. This is an example of a life-threatening self-injurious behavior.
Now, in addition to the tics, I understand that you also have some behavioral problems. Can you describe that for me? What bothers you the most?
Yes, I have a problem with self-mutilation.
Okay, can you tell me what self-mutilation means to you?
It means that I'm cutting myself with razor blades.
Okay.
Well, it's more like a sexual fantasy.
A sexual fantasy?
Yes.
Uh-huh. And when you actually cut yourself or injure yourself, does that satisfy the urge?
Yes.
I mean, is it sort of like having a climax? Is that same kind of feeling that you have?
Yes.
Uh-huh. Do you actually have a climax when it happens?
Not anymore.
But you used to?
Used to.
When you would cut yourself, you would actually have a climax?
Yes.
Uh-huh. And now, what is the most serious injury you've sustained?
I cut my abdomen open.
When you cut yourself, you actually cut not only through the skin, but also into the intestines, is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
Tics and tardive dystonia. This patient with long-standing TS developed tardive dystonia as a result of the use of haloperidol for his tics.
And what's
49.
49. And what's bothering you the most?
I'm drinking too much caffeine and not getting enough sex. No, my movement.
Uh-huh. And how does this affect your ability to do things? Does this interfere with social interactions?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Some tricks that you use that help reduce
Yeah.
things?
Watching stimulating videos.
What do you mean? What do you mean by stimulating videos?
Well, I used to play a lot of rugby. I got some rugby tapes from international matches from England, and I watched those.
Treatment with botulinum toxin. This patient with cervical, shoulder, and arm tics has had marked improvement not only in her motor tics, but also in the premonitory urge.
And how does the injection help you?
Actually, it's like a difference of night and day. Beforehand, I'm kind of like what I'm doing. Now it's extremely painful and exhausting, very fatigued and tired and frustrated, to say the least. And then when I get the injections about 3 to 5 days later, it's like a new person. And I didn't go that way for about about 2 months. Actually, I think that the Botox works incredibly well, and the difference is that once it wears off, then it's like it makes up for the 2 months I didn't tick. You know, it's like I can hold it for 2 months, and it doesn't bother me. But then once the medication wears off, I don't have the strength to hold it anymore, and it all comes back at once.